Slow day today, so we're doing some maintenance on some of the tools I have, including this torque wrench. And I had it apart, and I've already cleaned it, and I thought I'd make a quick video about how these things work. So you got the ratchet here at the end, and this one happens to go both ways, so it is like a regular ratchet type. Goes in here to the head, and then this is the click mechanism. I'll get to that in a minute. Then you got the spring. You got a washer stack that's determined by the factory that made it, and then you got your adjustment down here and how you set the how you're setting the torque setting, and also how you calibrate it. And then here you have the main body of the torque wrench. That's what you're hanging onto, and then the end here is the handle where you do the adjusting. So how this works is when you twist this handle on this body, it moves up and down on this calibrated scale there. And what you're really doing is that is a hexagonal shape inside there, which this fits into. This threads into there, and then this mechanism, this will drop down into there, and this goes behind it, and that's how you lock your calibration setting in. So your calibration on this is how far in or out this screw is from the adjustment body. All right, so as you have that calibrated, and then this is locked in there, as you screw the handle, it's secured to the screw, so that you're adjusting the tension on the spring. Now how this works is you got your thrust washer, which is here at the end. It's got that little dimple on it. And then you got your washer stack, and they probably use, the factory that makes this probably uses the same spring for multiple wrenches. So they determine with the range of this torque wrench how many stacks or how many washers need to fit in there. In this case, it's that many. And then this puts pressure on this spring here, all right? So then what happens at the business end down here is that spring puts pressure onto this this part, and then in between you have this little square, and these are all hardened steel, so you have this little square piece, and depending on the spring pressure that you have putting force up into the head, it's going to determine how easily or not easily it is for this to rock and rotate in there. So that's what the click is. When you're tightening on a bolt and it gets to that point where the force going that way is greater than the spring, it's going to rock that little piece of metal in there, and that's the click, like that. So that's it. That's how the torque wrench works. So wrench is back together. Everything's been greased. I used to use a multi-purpose, basically like a wheel bearing grease, and then all the adjustment parts in the handle here, use some Never Seas on, and then up here in the ratchet head, I'll use like this is actually Rotella engine oil. So everything's back together. Nice. Ratchet works, and I'll show you how I calibrate them after I rebuild them. So before we calibrate this, we need to make sure that we're pulling 12 inches from the center line of rotation, or the socket head. So I like to use a piece of tape, and we'll mark off 12 inches. Then I'll use the inside of the tape to make a nice line. And then for an idiot check, make sure this is 12 inches. It's good. So we've already made the adjustment, and this is set 20 foot-pounds. That feels about, that's like what 20 foot-pounds should feel like. So I've kind of made a rough adjustment, and then we're gonna be using the fish scale and a lever system to get a real accurate pull on that, and verify that we're 12 inches off the center line of rotation, and we're gonna basically convert that right to foot-pounds force. So we zeroed that out. Get this right at a foot. Get our torque multiplication device on it so we can get a real accurate pull on it and not hose this up, and see where she clicks at. 21.26. So I'm gonna back her off a little bit. Zero it out again. $21.08. So we'll back her off a little more. Quarter turn this time. Zero it out. Make sure we're still at a foot. $19.86. That's pretty good. So we're gonna crank it up to 40 foot-pounds and see what she pulls at 40. So we got the wrench set at exactly 20 foot-pounds. However, before we turn this handle, you got to lock the setting in, because we're going to take it up to 40 and see if it's still accurate. So this is the locking mechanism, and it drops down into it's kind of just like a lock nut. And then we're going to put some anti-seize on this. And of course it goes sideways. All right, so we're going to crank this up to 40. See what she do. Oh, 40.38. Dang. That's as good as you're gonna get with this one. So this adjustment's pretty good. We'll take it up to, this is I think a 10 to 75, so we'll take it up to 60 and see what she pulls. And remember, you always want to do this at 90-degree angles. Otherwise you have to take in that. Zero it out. And we're going for 60 on this. $60.16. This thing is perfect. So I'm actually gonna tighten this lock screw down a little bit, but other than that, this thing's perfect. That's exactly where we want it set at, and put a cal sticker on this and put it back in the toolbox. forbidden crescent wrench. All right, so that's locked down. I went and tested this at 20 foot-pounds again after we did 60 just to make sure it held, and it was perfect. It was like 19.68 or something. So that's really good. I pick up these stickers off of Amazon, little Cal stickers, and it's how I keep track of when I've rebuilt them, if they're calibrated, when the last time I did it, and all my torque wrenches. I go through and check them every once in a while. This is another CDI. This is a really good wrench, and I still need to do my big one, but this one I've checked this and never had to make an adjustment on it. This one's a really good one. These old dial styles. And as a last and final tip of advice, never store torque wrenches of the click style like this set at a torque setting, because remember that spring is inside here and that spring is under tension. When you have it adjusted to your torque setting you're putting a force on that spring, which is acting on that little square piece that was up in here. So whenever you store a wrench, always back it down to 0, and your wrenches will stay within tolerance much longer.